In the late 1960s, Nigeria was already being torn apart by the civil war in the east. But while guns thundered in Biafra, another struggle rose quietly in the southwest. It was not fought by soldiers in uniforms, but by farmers in village cloth. Their weapons were not rifles, but cutlasses, farm tools, and an unshakable will. This was the Agbekoya Uprising, a rebellion that shook the Yoruba heartland and forced the government to bow before the power of the people. The Yoruba countryside was the economic engine of western Nigeria. From cocoa beans to palm oil, from yams to cassava, the farms of Oyo, Ijebu, Iwo, and Ibadan fed both the region and the nation. But behind this prosperity lay deep injustice. Farmers were the backbone of the economy, yet they lived in hardship. Taxes were crushing, local officials extorted them, and through the marketing boards, the government bought their cocoa at cheap prices and resold it abroad for huge profits. The peasant farmer, the very one who tilled the land, was left with almost nothing. By 1968, anger had grown unbearable. Villagers whispered that they had reached their breaking point. They gave themselves a name, Agbekoya, meaning the farmer who rejects suffering. The name alone was defiance. It was a declaration that they would no longer bend their backs for leaders who saw them only as taxpayers, never as human beings. Their demands were simple: reduce the unbearable taxes, stop the corruption of local officials, improve rural roads and services, and pay fair prices for their produce. But the government dismissed them. And so, the farmers chose the path of resistance. The uprising began like wildfire. In towns and villages, farmers refused to pay taxes. They marched to government offices. In some places, they set fire to tax records, tearing apart the paper that kept them in bondage. Prisons holding arrested farmers were stormed and the captives freed. The countryside rose in waves of protest, spreading from Ibadan through Iwo and across the cocoa belt. The Agbekoya were no longer just disgruntled farmers. They had become a movement. The government, already stretched by the civil war, responded with force. Police and soldiers were sent into the villages. Farmers were arrested, beaten, and some killed. But the repression only strengthened their resolve. The Agbekoya believed their charms and oaths would protect them from bullets. More importantly, they believed they had nothing left to lose.
The rebellion soon found leadership.
Men like Tafa Adeoye, himself a farmer, rose to guide the struggle. Under his leadership, the Agbekoya organized their protests, chose targets carefully, and swore oaths of loyalty. The government suddenly realized that this was not a scattered riot. It was a full-scale peasant revolt. By 1969, the rebellion had grown too large to ignore. With the civil war draining resources, the Western government could not risk an endless rural conflict. Reluctantly, officials opened negotiations with the Agbekoya leaders. For the first time, the voices of poor farmers echoed inside government halls, and remarkably, the Agbekoya won real concessions. Taxes were reduced, some corrupt officials were removed, and the state promised better conditions for farmers. The rebellion had forced the government to listen. The Agbekoya Uprising did not create overnight prosperity, but it marked a turning point. For the first time in post-colonial Nigeria, ordinary peasants, men and women who had no guns, no political power, no riches, rose up and made the government bow to their demands. It was a powerful reminder that unity and courage could achieve what silence and endurance never could. The Agbekoya Uprising remains one of the most significant revolts in Nigerian history. It was not about conquest or secession, but about dignity, justice, and survival. For the Yoruba farmers, the struggle was clear. If they did not fight, they would perish. And so, with cutlasses in their hands and courage in their hearts, they rewrote history. Today, the story of Agbekoya lives on, not just as a memory of rebellion, but as a lesson in the power of ordinary people.